Hello guys, good afternoon, welcome to another video in the Zio Bússola channel. This time I will be broadcasting in English and most probably I will translate this to Portuguese as well. So today we are going to talk about RNAV approaches. A few guys asked me about these kind of approaches, how to fly it, how to set up, how to configure the aircraft properly. So most probably this is not the way I was going to do in a real flight, but I will give you some tips that can improve your energy management during the approach, so you'll get the airplane stable for sure by 1000 feet. And we are going to talk about the RNAV approaches as well. What you can see now is a 737 in a holding pattern at 10,000 feet, and we are going to use this holding pattern to set up the approach, and then we shoot this approach from 10,000 feet. Okay, so I'm going right now to my X-plane and let's go inside this 737. So first thing I want to show you is the approach that we are going to fly today. Is this approach here, RNAV GNSS runway 11 in Porto Alegre, Brazil, is a place south of Brazil. Why I choose this approach? Because it's a simple RNAV approach, and it's close to ground, to main sea level. So we have the airport elevation is just 12 feet. So it's better for you to have a better situational awareness in terms of height on this approach to the ground. So what we have on the chart here, just for you to be familiar, the first line we have the frequencies, and then we have something called Jeppesen, something what they call the briefing strip. So here we have, it's an RNAV, the final approach course is 108, the final approach fix is ISEPA, and the altitude crossing is 1,720 feet. That is 1,709 feet high. Okay, this is the altitude and this is the height. So for an LNAV and VNAV approach, we can go down to a DA, a decision altitude of 407 feet, and this is a height of 396 feet. Airport elevation is 12 feet, and the runway 11 elevation is 11 feet. So this, it doesn't mean runway 11, it means that the runway elevation is 11 feet. And in this case, it's also runway 11 and 11 feet. The missed approach is climb to 5,000 on course 108. When passing 3,000, we turn right direct to position Vuget for holding. The MSA is a TAA around 25 miles from the initial approach fix. This is an RNP approach. We have transition altitude at 6,000 and transition level is by ATC. And it says for uncompensated systems, LNAV and VNAV procedure is not authorized below minus 10 degrees Celsius. Okay, so this is the the lateral of our approach. I'm going to shoot this approach from position Ogvug here in the top. So we have initial approach fix Ogvug 4,000 feet. From this position, we go 6 miles on the course 178 to position Papa Alpha 004, and this is the intermediate fix. Papa Alpha 004, you can see the altitude here below. Papa Alpha 004 is 2,700 feet or above. That's the way Jeppesen says, or above. They are always minimum altitudes unless they are described differently. If this was a hard altitude, it will be at or at 2,700 feet. It doesn't say anything, so it's the minimum altitude. And then from Papa Alpha 004 on the courses 108, we go to ISEPA. So here we can also see the course 108 going to ISEPA altitude 1720, and the distance between Papa Alpha 004 and ISEPA is 4.8 miles. Then from ISEPA we continue on the course 108 to a point 2 miles to the runway or the runway 11. What I say this is because this is a constraint that we have 2 miles to the runway 11, we need to be at 600 feet. As we are going to fly LNAV and VNAV, the 3 degree path here, as you can see, will cover this 600 feet. So we go down to the runway 11. And one thing I want to show you as well here, it says TCH is threshold crossing height. So we are going to cross the threshold here 50 feet above the threshold, and the runway is 11 feet, so if you add those two, 50 plus 11, it's 61. Why I'm going to show you this? You are going to see this 61 codec in our FMC. So it again says the descent angle of 3 degree and around 1400 knots ground speed. We'll have something like 750 feet per minute for descent. This is the lights for the approach and a brief description on the missed approach. And another thing we have here which is important for our procedure is LNAV and VNAV. The DA is 407 as mentioned before here in the briefing strip. Okay, so that's what we have for now, and I'm going to show you that all this information is on my FMC. So this is the FMC. We have position OGVUV at 4000 or above. Then course 178 to Papa Alpha 004, it is 6 miles and we have 2700 or above. Then we fly on course 108 for 4.8 miles to position ISEPA, and we cross ISEPA at 1720 feet or above. And then we continue on course 108, it's 5.2 miles, 3 degree glide path to runway 11. And as I mentioned, we are going to cross the pointed threshold runway 11 at 61 feet. Remember, the 61 feet, it comes from here, the threshold crossing height plus the runway height, so this is 61 feet. I didn't mention the 5.2 from ISEPA to runway when I was showing you this chart. So from ISEPA to runway 11 we have 5.2 miles. It's what you have here. And then the missed approach is also codec here, but we don't really care about the missed approach for this procedure. Okay, so to prepare for this approach, I want to show you, we set the minimums. So minimums is already here, Baro 407, and I already set the flap and the speed for this approach. So when you come here, you have your landing weight right now is 60 tons, and with 60 tons I'm going to show you to change, sorry. So this with 60 tons or 59.9 is what we have now. Flaps 30 is our VREF speed is 142. So we have 142, and I'm not going to go into details about the speed correction for this approach, but usually it's 5 knots. As you can see here, wind correction in the bottom, plus 5 knots. So our VREF speed is 142 for flaps 30, but our V approach speed, the speed that we are going to fly on this approach with flaps 30, is plus 5 knots from this one. So the speed will be 147 on final approach with flaps 30. I also want you to notice one thing. Even though we are not doing a flaps 40 landing, I want you to remember the flaps 40 landing VREF speed of 135 is what we have here. We always have this information here. Why I want you to know this information? Because all the speeds that we have here, all the maneuver speeds, like this flap up here speed, is based on the flaps 40 VREF speed. So the flap up maneuver speed will always be the flaps 40 VREF speed plus 70 knots. So 135, as I showed you right here, 135 is the VREF flaps 40. It doesn't matter if we are landing with flaps 30, we always take in consideration the flaps 40. So flaps 40, 135 plus 70 knots, it's 205, and this is our flap up speed right here, 205. What I want you to do to better manage the energy for this approach, there are two simple things you can do when you are setting up this approach, and they are both related to the initial approach fix. As I told you, most probably in a real flight I was not going to do this because I'm a professional pilot and I know how to manage the energy during the approach. But I want you, for your RNAV approaches, if you're learning how to configure the airplane and manage the approach, always set on the initial approach fix, which is today OGVUV, always set the flap up speed plus 5 knots here. So how you do this? You take the flaps 40 speed, 135. You add the flap up speed 70, so it's going to be 205, and you add another 5 knots, so 210. Come here and set 210. Note that we have now 217 and 4,000 or above. What I want you to do is to set the speed that we calculate, 210 slash, and make this 4,000 as a hard altitude, not or above 4,000, just 4,000. Okay, so we are right now reducing 7 knots and making the airplane to reach OGVUV at 4,000 and not 4,000 or above. Okay, so we change this here and we execute. Just for you to notice the difference, if we delete this information without executing, it's going to show which speed and altitude the airplane was going to cross, and this would be 216 and 4,500 feet, flight level 45. Okay, so I'm going to erase, and then in this case we have 6 knots less on the speed and 500 less on the altitude, but it is according to our procedure, because 4,000 is the minimum, so you can actually cross there at 4,000. Okay, so do this kind of setup if you want to be there with more room for you to deploy your flaps. Okay, so what we are going to do on this approach, and I'm going back to the chart here, as we set a OGVUV a speed just above flap up speed, at OGVUV I'm going to select flaps 1. Then we continue the approach, and halfway between the initial approach fix and the intermediate fix I'm going to select flaps 5. Then we turn into the final. As we turn into the final and we are stable on the final, I'm going to select gear down and flaps 15. Okay, and just before or at ISEPA or just after ISEPA, so around ISEPA, we are going to set our flaps 30 landing. And remember, because this will be a VNAV approach, every time we set the flap, the 737 automatically reduces to the next flap speed unless you change something. So keep your airplane on VNAV and just extend the flaps, and we are going to see how the 737 can manage this. Okay, so right now to continue this approach, I'm going to exit this hold and I'm going to execute. Okay, we are a little high, so I'm going to turn this now to 4,000 feet is what we have, and I'm going to use flight level change with the 250 knots that we have below 10,000 feet. Okay, this may happen to you as well, so if you come high on the approach, don't worry, just extend your speed brakes. So this is something that we are going to do right now. We extend our speed brakes. What we want to go down until we reach the VNAV path, and then we change the mode from level change to VNAV, and the airplane is going to follow the VNAV for all the procedure that we just checked. Okay, another thing, I'm going to set the local altimeter 1013, and most probably right now we were going to do the approach checklist. Okay, as you can see, we are maintaining 250 knots, descending to 4,000, and we are 700 above the path. Right now 650, so the path is coming. As we approach, I'm going to select VNAV. Okay, we have 400 to go now. Okay, the path is coming. I didn't select the auto brake. Okay, the auto brake is selected right now. So I'm going to engage the VNAV. It comes to VNAV path, reducing to 240 knots, as we have here on the descent speed, 240 knots below 10,000. And as we are reaching the path and the speed, I'm going to retract the speed brake. Okay, speed brake is retracted, and we are on path right now. Okay, so we are clear for the approach. The next thing we do is we set our minimums. So minimums is 407. We set 500 feet. Okay, that's for the minimums. Make sure you have a VNAV path and you set your minimums. So the airplane is going to keep all the constraints we set on the FMC for this approach. Okay, so as you notice right now, the airplane just started decelerating towards the 210 knots that we set at Ogvu. This is just above flap up speed, and as the airplane approaches this speed around 220 knots or 215, I'm going to extend the flaps to flaps 1 as we cross position Ogvu. Okay, so Ogvu is coming. I'm going to wait for 220 or 225. Anything within 20 miles, it's good enough. Okay, I will keep like this so you can see the flaps moving here as well and on the speed tape. Okay, so we have 230 knots. I'm going to select these as well. Okay, so right now we are on the approach around 225 knots, and I'm going to select flaps 1. So we have the FMC speed, flaps going to flaps 1, and notice that speed automatically drops to flap 1 speed. Okay, this is going to be 108, the final approach course. I don't want to change it anymore because I want you to concentrate on other things. Okay, as we are halfway from the initial approach fix to the intermediate fix, I'm going to set flaps 5, and notice I'm not changing anything on my MCP. I'm just extending the flaps. So flaps 5 right now. The airplane on FMC speed brings the speed to flaps 5. Okay, so it's coming to flaps 5, 165 knots. We have the path, and the airplane is descending on the path. That's good enough. So we are going to be turning to the final, As we turn to the final and we are stable on the final, we set the gear down and flaps 15. Okay, turning to the final right now. We continue on this approach. And anytime we are 300 feet or below our missed approach altitude, we can set the missed approach altitude, which is 70. So we can set during this turn now 70. Note, I set a higher altitude and the airplane is still on path descending. Okay, right now we are turning into the final. We reach the final. We set the gear down and flaps to 15. So because we have FMC speed and VNAV path, the airplane slows down to flap 15 speed automatically. At this time we set our engine start to switches to continuous, and we arm our speed brake. Okay, so this continues our approach. We are going now towards Isepa. We'll be at 1720 feet. So we just wait. Okay, that's fine. 1.6 miles to Isepa, close to Isepa. This is your final call. You can make it around 1,500 feet, around 2,000 feet, or over the fix. It doesn't matter because you already have the airplane configured flaps 15 and gear down on the flaps 15 speed. So right now I'm going to set flaps to 30, and notice that the FMC brings the speed to 147, which is our approach speed for this one. We cross Isepa 1,720 or above, and as you can see, we are on the path on this approach. Now we do the landing checklist. Landing checklist is engine, start switch, continuous, speed brake armed, landing gear down, and flaps 30 green light. Landing checklist is completed. As we have runway 11 here, 3 degree glide path going towards the threshold crossing high, the correct one, the LNAV and VNAV and the flight directors, because we have this mode selected, is going to give us guidance until we cross the threshold. So anytime you disconnect the autopilot, you don't need to go visually to the runway. You can keep tracking your flight director until you are crossing the threshold. So this can help you if you have difficulties to maintain a visual approach to the runway. Okay, as today I don't have my joystick here, I'm not going to perform this landing. I'm going to pause the simulator at 50 feet, and I will keep the autopilot engaged until there. In real life, we have minimum altitudes for the autopilot, and the autopilot should be disengaged before that, but I'm going to keep the autopilot on until the 50 feet. So you can notice that if you are flying manually and flying the flight director, you are going to come to the threshold. Okay, so that's the way it is. You see, and then I'm going to pause right here. Okay, so right now you are pretty much crossing the threshold. It says 80 feet. We are almost there. You were going to cross this threshold at 50 feet. Okay, so that's the way you can manage the energy and configure your airplane for this approach. Okay, I hope you enjoy this video, and I'll see you next time, maybe with more tips regarding the RNAV approaches. Thank you so much, and bye bye.